Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first live. So I'm gonna let everybody join, and we will be shortly inviting our guest to join us too. So let everybody arrive. So this week we've chosen to speak about transparency here at Make It Agency. Today we will be speaking about communication strategies during these trying times, these very challenging times. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Vince to join us. So just 1 second. Here we go. So Vince will be joining us in a couple of
Hi,
minutes.
bonsoir,
Here he
ciao,
is.
come
Ciao,
stai?
ciao. So I just introduced the live to everyone. We're letting everyone join us. I haven't had time to introduce you and why we're
Oh,
inviting you, actually. So it makes sense. So Vince Calvi is the communication manager for the brand Amédée Paris, which is an eco-responsible scarf brand. And he's been chosen by design for many different reasons that you will discover with us now, as we will ask Vince to introduce himself,
oh
if
God.
you will.
As much as I love communicating for Amédée and as a communications person, talking about myself, not something I really enjoy. But a little bit about
We're
me
going to
is
need it
that
here.
I've been with Amédée since I graduated with my MBA a little over a year ago. As the director of communications for the brand, I got my master's in Paris. I went to an undergrad in Boston. I'm originally from Connecticut. I lived in New York. I lived in China. My family's Italian. We're immigrants. I'm trying to do this like
100%
the
international.
the rapid fire bit. I kind of speak French. I kind of speak Spanish. I pretty much speak Italian. I kind of speak Chinese. You know, the whole. I run the gamut. Um, and really, what got me into communications and fashion, one, my grandmother was a designer, so I grew up, learning how to sew. And then in college, I started a fashion magazine with a couple of my friends, and I was editor in chief and for a little while the director of marketing of that. So I built it from the ground up, and it still is like going on today. So it's really cool to still see them like posting on Instagram and see how they've evolved, and they have no clue when they get a like from my account who I am, but it's still really cool for me to see that thrive. And I've worked Paris Fashion Week a bunch of times, New York Fashion Week. I've done communications in the States, in Paris, all around the world. So uh, that's where my background is and where I'm from. So enough about my personal background.
No,
Let's
and
talk.
I just wanted to complete that. I find there's something very interesting about you is your age. I don't know if I can ask you. Everybody will know your age, but
Mm,
you happen to be at an age where you're really one foot in the Gen Z and one foot in the millennial, and I think that's very interesting. For I mean, as a communication manager,
mhm.
as you've always, you're 100% connected. I mean, that's almost how you were born, right? So
Yeah,
um
so I'm 26. I know my hair probably says I'm a little bit older, but I'm 26, and I definitely feel like people who are in their mid 20s are really those who straddled both. Like we're both digital natives, but we're also from that old guard because I got my first cell phone when I was 12 versus my cousin who is like in college now has had a cell phone in her hand since she was like 5. So I'm not necessarily like born with an iPad in my hand, but I still remember dial up and AIM instant messenger and all of that. So I still appreciate a pen and paper and all of that. But at the same time, give me an iPhone and I'm instantly tech savvy and helping everybody around me. So something to
Exactly.
make clear is that millennials are 1982 to 1995, and I am 1993. So I really am that cusp. People kind of get what is a millennial confused every once in a while. So I just want to keep it clear.
Yeah, you're right in doing so. So, without further ado, so I just wanted to say that whoever, of course, if you want to ask your questions, feel free. Now's the time. So, jumping into the subject, so I was interested in knowing basically what you've observed in terms of communication strategies from different brands in the industry since this pandemic broke out, and yeah, to learn more about your observations of how brands have decided to deal with this in communication terms.
So I've noticed a few different things. I think to kind of, before I say what I've observed, I think, this is all uncharted territory for everybody across the world. And there's no right answer. There's definitely a wrong answer, but there's no correct answer on how to
Mm-hmm.
communicate during it. And I think what's super important is to really make sure that you're maintaining your brand ethos when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that. And so knowing the brands that I follow, I've watched them, and some of them have continued into their brand ethos and some haven't. I've noticed there is a group of brands that kind of are acting as business as usual, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming, or at least hoping, that their point of view with that decision is to kind of maintain a sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
On
So to be
another,
reassuring in a
yeah, to
way.
be reassuring, like, oh, I mean, they're brands that they're definitely. I think every brand that I've seen has acknowledged the crisis in some way, shape, or form,
Mm.
whether it's in a newsletter or an Instagram post or a story post or an ad somewhere. But generally day to day, you're still seeing business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have another set of brands who aren't really saying anything about their products anymore, and it's just about cultivating familiarity and like a safe space and a warm environment and opening up and trying to connect more. That's definitely what I've been trying to do. And then you also have brands that are kind of straddling both, who aren't pushing products but are still showcasing their products and still communicating. And then I've also seen brands, both who didn't post a lot post more, and brands that posted a lot post less. So it really is like those are kind of the four buckets that I've observed over the past, what week are we on in quarantine?
Yeah, and you were saying to me something earlier when we discussed about this live, that you were seeing more newsletters coming your way from certain brands, so that
Yeah.
this kind of
So
over
yeah.
communication type
Yeah.
of thing.
A lot. So I mean, it could, me as a communicator, we put out our newsletters. I do know and understand the importance of them. As a consumer, like personal me, not professional me, I hate newsletters. The more you email me, the less I want to shop from you.
Why
The
is
the
that?
fact it's just it's too bombarding. I get so many emails every single day
Yeah, it's
that
too invasive.
if I get like there's a particular brand where now my email marks it as spam because I get emails from them so often. And I think, especially now, yes, we all have more time. I kind of, the ethos behind it, or the methodology behind it to me, I think is, oh, you're home now, so you can check your email more and you can read it and we can talk to you more. Whereas I would say, because the person is home, they have more time to actually sit and read the newsletter. So a longer newsletter that's less frequently, that actually is saying something meaningful, even if it has nothing to do with the brand itself, with the products that you're selling, but it's something meaningful that we're bringing to the audience. That's what I think is the smarter way to go
For newsletters,
for
right?
newsletters, for
When we're
newsletter
talking
communication.
specifically about newsletters.
Yeah, like right now to me it's like less is more almost.
Which is kind of the global feeling at the
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yeah.
Um, So it's totally coherent. I was wondering, since yeah, you know, it's your forte. What about, do you have any best practices or tips to give, you know, to the people who are watching us, on how to
So
navigate this storm, basically, and what we can basically also take away from this experience, like, because of course it's something very harsh that we're living, but maybe we can turn it into positive, in a way, in again, in communication terms.
So there's a couple pockets of your question that I'll try to answer
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot in
as
there.
clearly as possible. It's fine. In terms of brands and kind of the best practices and those tips, for me, I think it's really important to pinpoint your brand's ethos, take out what you're trying to sell, and communicate who you are the best way that you can. From and that's doing well, that has a huge platform, like millions of followers,
Hmm.
and then someone like ours who only has we have 10.9K followers on Instagram. That's our largest followed social media platform. So I want to give those two examples.
Yeah.
So to start with the bigger example, the Jack Mooses of the world, the Pradas, et cetera, et cetera. Jack Moose is really a brand that I have really appreciated his communication. Obviously, he is a very personal um, communicator,
Hmm.
and his personal account and his brand account are one and the same.
Yeah.
That's definitely something a little bit more unique, aside from like the Pradas of the world and those other brands that are like Miuccia has her own Instagram, and Prada is its Prada. So obviously, there's going to be a difference, but with him, I haven't seen him push products at all over this pandemic, but he's done really fun campaigns of, Jack Moose at home, both in the sense that he did the campaign via FaceTime with Bella Hadid, taking directly the cues from Vogue Italia and the way that they shot their
Yeah.
special
And let's
edition.
stop right there. Can you
Mhm.
tell us what's interesting? Because for those who don't know about this campaign with Bella Hadid, and Vogue Italia, can you tell us what they did basically that was different from everybody else?
So Vogue Italia definitely kind of led the storm with the proper media communications. So that's obviously separate from brands.
Mm.
With their April issue, obviously Italy is one of the hardest hit places of coronavirus.
Yeah.
So they're really feeling it there. And they did a white cover. They had a lot of stuff built in home, and they spoke directly to the pandemic. Obviously, a media outlet is going to be more equipped to speak to it directly because it's literally their job
Hmm.
to do so. So they did that, and with Bella Hadid via FaceTime, they were able to produce a photo shoot where the photos were taken that way.
So
So
Bella Hadid took the
in her
pictures
house
herself
with the shoes on
in
her,
her
like
house.
covering it, taking the pictures through FaceTime, whether they did it from a laptop or an iPhone, they did it via FaceTime. And so then Jack Moose for summer 2020 did the same thing with his collection. I'm assuming he just shipped the products to her house in California or wherever in the world she is for the pandemic, and they shot it via FaceTime as well. And so it's speaking to the moment as well as being able to still communicate the brand. So it's kind of that subversive type of communication that you're able to produce in this time that you can when you have such a large following. And then even from outside of that photo shoot that he did with Bella, he's, engaged his audience by, having them use products within their home to make the similar styles that he does. And that's
Yeah.
really cool. It engages the audience. And I know I have a friend who's obsessed with Jack Moose and did it and was like trying to get his post reshared on the story. And, that in and of itself, like you're getting it gives people something to do while we're home all day. And like, yes, like a lot, there is a chunk of us that do still have to work our 9 to 5s from home now,
Mm.
and are keeping occupied, but there's still a lot more downtime, and there's only so much you can do when you're home.
Yeah, and I think the learning also from that example that you just gave is that it makes it very personal, because
Exactly.
in a way it was the model's choice to shoot it or show the product in a certain way, and she's
Exactly.
in her home. So we're living it with her, and I think that's very interesting. And this leads me to my next question, which is really about well, our subject of the week here, which is transparency. Of course, so Jacques Mu, took us into Bella Hadid's home, so she's like practically there. We
Hmm.
see her interior. We see her taking pictures without, a hoopla of people around, setting up things. It's very spontaneous as well, and yeah, and again, I think it's strong in engaging your community because that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah. It's
So
exactly that's exactly what it's about. But before we go on to the transparency, I think it's important to speak to just this what a smaller brand can do that doesn't have
yes,
the
of
budget of
course,
getting a
of
Bella
course.
Hadid. So specifically, what I've been doing with Amédée. So we had a campaign. Well, before I say that, people who don't work in communications, I don't think realize that people like the Instagram feeds that brands are posting. Those are planned weeks, months in advance. So you have a whole schedule. We create so literally a social media calendar, and we have like, okay, on this date we're posting this with this caption and this thing. And there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. And prior to the pandemic reaching kind of its tipping point, particularly in France, because for me with Amédée, my mindset is Europe and the USA and communicating to these places. And so when France went to confinement, I was halfway through my current social media plan at the time, and I had to scrap all of it away and had to start from scratch. So what I decided to do for social media during the pandemic was because we don't have a huge budget, we're not a big brand, we don't have access to Bella Hadid, and we also don't have the access to do a cool kind of a shoot through FaceTime, just given the circumstances.
Yeah,
So I said, okay, what kind of message can we say that fits our brand ethos?
yeah,
And things to know is that we're about traveling, and we are about sustainability and transparency and eco responsibility. And the brand itself is 100% merino wool products, ethically sourced, of course. So sheep. We own our farms that the sheep come from. We have access to it. So what I chose to do is I mined all of our archives of photos from the farms and from all over the world where we have factories and all of that. And I weaved a way of being able to tell two types of stories. One, virtual vacations, that's really kind of thinking, how can you travel from your couch and to kind of
yeah,
bring yourself outside of this pandemic. For example, a lot of people like myself, like I live in 23 meters squared in Paris, and not everybody gets to live in the countryside and have land and everywhere and can think about that. And even if you are, that can get boring if you're stuck looking at the same blade of
we're
grass
all
for a
dreaming
month.
of going to the
Yes,
countryside or to the
we all
sea
want to be
or
somewhere else. We want to be on a
yeah.
beach. We want to be on the other side of the world. We want to be with other people. So I wanted to kind of tell that travel story. And then in the same vein, well, I wanted to keep things light and fun. So we've always had it in our ethos for the past year that I've been doing it with, posting our sheep in queue and, like hashtag Sundays for the sheep, like cute things like that. And so I really kind of ramped that up. So not only are you seeing sheep, but because we have factories and farms in Tasmania and New Zealand, we're exposed to different animals like wombats.
Yeah.
So I posted a cute wombat, and like, and we're really trying to engage. In the sheep, like I saw the most hilarious picture of an overgrown sheep of merino wool, and so it was like ready to go to the barber shop when the barbershop's open, something along those lines. So it's speaking to the moment while still speaking exactly to who we are as a brand, and it's still engaging it and keeping people interested in who we
And
are.
yeah, and what we were saying earlier, again, we were telling me it's also because you, as a communicator, need to show that you understand what your audience is going through, and the
Exactly.
emotions, and the
Exactly.
difficulties of again
Yeah.
also going through this
Yeah.
particular time,
Yeah, so like for
right?
me, yeah, and so like for me, there's three kind of like key words that because I wanted, so we took a couple days off. Basically, we knew we were going into confinement in France. I scrapped all of my social. I took a few days to one, collect myself and be good in my own mental health and my own mental status, because
Mm.
I mean, I live in Paris by myself. I came here, my family is 5,000 miles away in America and a couple hundred miles away in Italy. So I obviously needed to take myself seriously, and then that allowed me to think about the brand and think
Hmm.
globally and think, how do I really want to do that? So I threw away what I was planning on to do on social. I sat down with myself for a couple days, and I really thoughtfully planned out what it was. And the pillars that I've been using is being inclusive to make sure that we're speaking to the whole audience, conscious to make sure
Hmm.
that we're saying the right thing, and sensitive because this is a hard time for a lot of people. And the
Yeah.
last thing that they want to see on Instagram is someone trying to push a product in their face and be like, oh, buy me, buy me. No, that's not the mindset right now. The mindset is survival. The world is in survival mode right now, not shopping mode. And we need to
Yeah.
be 100% clear of that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's very interesting. Actually, and I think, yeah, this is the takeaway. Maybe that's the takeaway of today's live is inclusive, conscious, and sensitive
Yeah,
in your communication strategy, and stay true to, as you said, to your ethos. Moving a bit away from a product as we would regularly be,
exactly.
ideally. Just for our last question, which is the hot topic of the week again, which is transparency. Could you maybe tell us a bit more about transparency at the moment, and how important it is yeah, today, basically?
Well, the interesting thing, at least for me, is that even prior to joining Amédée, I've always had it in my personal ethos that wherever I would go as a company was that transparency is number one. It's really important to just be honest and clear with everybody about it. And so brands that are ignoring what's going on, I think, are making the wrong decision in the moment. And you need to just be completely clear. And I think some brands and some people may think that being transparent is hard to do because we don't want to reveal our secrets, or we don't
Mm.
want to, that you legally can't share where you have a factory. But you can be easily transparent without, giving all those trade secrets. The consumer doesn't need to know exactly which factory something was made, but as long as they know that it's ethically made and you're being honest about it and you're showing it. So with
Yeah, and with Amédée, actually, this is something that actually that's the birth of that's one of the reasons for the birth of the brand, was transparency. And can you tell us maybe a bit more to illustrate
yeah,
what you're saying about the QR code that's been
Yeah, so with
developed?
Amédée, right now on our signature square scarf, but by the end of 2020 on all of our products, every person who has an Amédée scarf will be able to use their phone to scan a QR code, and they will get to see the entire blockchain integrated production line. So it's really cool that we use technology to our advantage here at Amédée. Or maybe not here in my house. But with Amédée, we love technology and being able to use it the best way we can. So if you scan that product, you see the sheep that it was shorn from the farm to
Which is
which,
absolutely amazing in fashion and completely
yeah,
innovative. So that, I think that's a very interesting
exactly.
example.
So you start from the sheep right through the factory. We kind of like to use the phrase from sheep to shop. I
Which is
know it's
true.
super corny, but sheep to shop is really kind of
That sticks.
that core phrase. I mean, it makes sense. It rings. Anyone who knows me and knows me as a writing, I love alliteration. So sheep to shop works. Thanks, Rissa. Issa Rissa says love it. Um, Thank you. But yeah, so that level of transparency is already in the core thing, core brand identity for Amédée. So it's super easy to translate that. The more the brands are honest about it, where they're like, even if a brand was like, we're not going to produce anything for the rest of the year, that's the reality. Like I saw it today. It's very topical. Yves Saint Laurent decided to not show the rest of the year. They were like, given the current pandemic, we're not going to show. We're going to show on our own time when it's right for us. So I think it's better, especially that they're saying that now when people are home and are still home and we're not deconfining yet, and kind of grab the media, be one of the first people to say it. So now Yves Saint Laurent is in our consciousness for being the first person to do that. So smart for them.
True.
And in the same vein as well, they're saying, you know what? We recognize this is a problem. We don't know. We're going to do what we can. We're going to do it on our own time. And we're going to use technology to our advantage to show that. So stay tuned. And I think that that's really important. So stay tuned is also probably a key word right now, because we just don't know. Everything is up in the air for everybody. And if we don't acknowledge that, then I think we're doing everybody a disservice.
Okay. And one last question, actually. Sorry, that wasn't the last.
No worries. We have time.
I was, I wanted to know, and I think if there are, young brands watching us, if you had a tip on a brand who's a bit lost in what's going on and how to basically survive this communication storm again, what would be your number one tip on how to communicate right now for a young brand?
Show, don't tell, and be honest. So, I mean,
I think that says it all.
Yeah, it really does. Show, don't tell, and be honest. I think, we have to look at it from two ways, right? In the sense of, one, communicating while the whole world is still in confinement. What are we saying during this present moment today? But we also have to continue to think about tomorrow. And what do we look like when things start to open up? When people can start go shopping again? When people can go to a restaurant and not just order Uber Eats to their house with contactless, when the world is opening up. And then also be conscious of the fact of when, Europe is going to be open before the US. That's definitely a thing. So we need to be conscious of that as well. So right now, showing in telling, I think, is going to be more for tomorrow. For today is to be honest with your audience and be true to what's going on. And even if that means you say, look, we don't have any content to post. We're not going to post anything right now. Still follow us. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care of yourselves and be healthy, be safe, positive. Like sending that good energy and being honest with that for today. For tomorrow, when things start to slowly go back to, I don't want to say normal, I want to say come to a new normal. That's when you're showing and not telling. So let's say things are back to normal, new normal. And
also, because just as you were saying, respectfully to China or the US or Europe or any other countries, we're not on the same timing, because not everyone was confined at the same time, that it didn't spread out.
Different practices, different, everything is staggered. Like China was starting to reopen. They now had their second wave. Same thing with South Korea. Even in Europe, everything is staggered.
So
France versus Germany, it's going to be progressive. But at the same time, we're in a global society now. We're in a global world, and communications wise, when I post on Instagram, it goes to the whole world. It doesn't just go to the US or to France or Germany or Italy or
That's why
China.
we're actually speaking English today.
Exactly. Je parle pas français, though, so
C'est pas grave. We're going to continue
ma in italiano,
in
potremmo
English.
di parlare in italiano, but English is, that globally understood language as well. But, we need to think about tomorrow. And, when I'm starting to plan my social for when we're deconfining, even when I was making that big plan a month ago, I came up with okay, if we start to deconfine on this day, we can do this. If we're not done it, but if not, we can do it then. I made confinement social through the summer. Complete transparency, I planned to be focus on the transparent and the confined social until the summer, no products, no nothing. But I have staggered other strategies for if things start to open at a certain day. So now we heard May 11th, even though I was planned until summer, I can start to redo my plans, and I
So
already have it in
basically, what you're
place.
saying is that instead of having one plan, you have multiple plans according to, day by day what's going to
Exactly.
happen, basically.
Exactly. I have different plans based on different scenarios because the reality is we are as a world in a gray area. We don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. We don't know uh, what's going to happen with even our own health, our family. We just don't know. And we need to make sure that we have different plans in place to be able to answer whatever the tomorrow's question is. We
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to answer it, and we need to be prepared for it. So, and even in that, we still need to be completely conscious of it. So for the new posting, when we start to reintegrate, Amédée is an accessories brand. We're focused primarily on scarves. When we start to talk about those scarves again to our audience and to show it to them, I'm going to show it to them. I'm not going to tell them to them. In the past, you see brands like new release T-shirt, buy now, blah blah blah, limited stock. No, that is done. That is done. We are going to present the product still within our brand ethos. Let's say, Italy is really important to us because of our manufacturing in Northern Italy. We have a scarf in Northern Italy. The focus is that Northern Italy, and we're tagging that product. So if someone sees it and they're like, oh my God, I love that scarf, I need to buy it, click buy in your box, shipped in 2 days. But we're
So,
not going to force it on them.
yeah, what I understand from what you're saying, underline, is that you should take advantage of these moments to reinforce your brand
Ethos, yeah.
ethos, of course, and yeah, your brand positioning and your brand. I mean, your storytelling and yeah, the to have a strong brand is
Yeah.
super important to again to weather the storm. So
Yeah.
that's very very interesting, indeed. I think let's see if we have any questions here.
Do we?
Um,
I saw some hellos, some hard eyes.
yeah, hi everyone. uh, let me see. No, no question. Ooh, that mean that we naturally answered any question there could be. No, no, if you don't, it's okay. If you don't have questions here, it's fine. This video will be uploaded to Amédée Paris's YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see it for 24 hours in Make It Agency story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to just MPS, if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to forward them to Vince.
And also
And
the Ami DMs are open.